Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. This is Crystal again, and I've decided I'm going to try to do weekly wrap-ups here in July to see how it goes. My last wrap-up that I did in June, for the last 2 weeks of June, was way too long. Way too long. And so I'm going to try to do a weekly, see if I get a little shorter and a little easier for me to remember what I read. All right, so this will be for this first week of here in July, and I've already read 6 things, so I already have a lot to talk about. So I'm just going to jump right in. We'll talk about the books I've read so far, and read some good ones. So let's get going. All right, so I started off finishing The Other by Thomas Tryon. I was really excited to read this. Thomas Tryon is a sort of classic horror author at this point, and I hadn't read anything by him. And this was the book club pick for Rachel Over the Shades of Orange's book club for June. I didn't quite finish in June, but I did finish up here in the 1st of July. And I was really excited about this book. It's, we got these twins. One's a good twin, one's a bad twin. And then I was so interested to see, where this was going to go. And as I got going, it was tough. The writing here, it was a bit meandering and long-winded sometimes, and sometimes talked about stuff you didn't really care about. Now, the main perspective here is of one of the boys, Niles, the good twin, and maybe that was it, because like I said, just kind of was meandering, lots of commas, things like that. And I was like, oh man, I don't know if I get into this one or not. But it did pull me in. So I was like, I need to at least see, I gotta read on and see where it goes. I was very curious to see where this went. I was like, there's got to be something more. There's more here, right? And so I kept going after that kind of first part where we are introduced to everyone and we learn why Holland is the bad twin, things like that. He does awful things. And so we get to this sort of middle section, and I about lost it. I was about done with this book. I ended up skimming a lot of it. It was boring. I don't know. We had family members visiting. These twins lived with an aunt and uncle, and their mom was there, and their grandmother, and things like that. And I had other aunts coming in to visit, and they were talking about stuff. Y'all, I about lost it in that. I was like, let me skim. I don't know why we're learning about these people. Why do I care? And then we get a little revelation. And I'm like, okay, Thomas Tryon, I see what you're doing here. You have hooked me back in. So I finished that last part. It's kind of a 3-part book. Get this last part. Ending knocked me out. It knocked me out. It was so good because we get this twist and these revelations and what's going on. But whoo, it was a ride to get there. I can't say that I enjoyed all of this book. I ended up on the 3 stars because really it was fine. The ending definitely was a punch, and so it heightened my enjoyment. But this writing, it went all which kinds of ways to get to the point. So I'm not necessarily done with the author, though. I would definitely give him another try to read something else, maybe Harvest Home or something. I think the nature of this story did kind of lend itself to this type of writing. Again, a lot of perspective was from a child. It just didn't totally work for me. Like I said, I just was kind of over it, But I did stick it out, and I finished it, and the ending was worth it. So, for what that's worth. Let's see. I then went into Unexpected Stories by Octavia Butler. This is a collection of 2 of her sort of novellas. I believe these were released posthumously, which is why they're called Unexpected Stories. Let's see, the narrator for this was Robin Miles. The first story was called Unnecessary Being, and it's kind of a sci-fi with sort of like some fantasy elements. I don't want to say too much about these, but I like that one a lot. Number 2, Child Finder. It's about this woman. She has like telepathy. It's like some kind of power to kind of to help locate children, right? Missing children. And that one was a bit shorter, and it was fine. But these are, it's Octavia Butler, right? I'm slowly making my way through her works, and also need to pick up her short works. And so the narrator for this was great. It was really good on audio, and like making those check marks on the Octavia read through that I'm doing. So the slow one. There's only so many left. So let's see. I finished The Fisherman by John Langan. That did this one on audio also. The narrator was Danny Campbell, and I ended up really liking this one. And I kind of had a feeling that I would, but you never know. So this is a story. Ultimately, it's a story about grief. There's 2 men that make a connection in this story through their loss. One man he's a bit of an older man, but he has lost his wife many years ago, but he still hangs on to her. And then we've got a younger man who more recently has lost his wife and his 2 young children. Heartbreaking, right? My son is humming in the background. This is my life. So anyway, and these guys actually work together, and the older man has picked up a new hobby after his wife passed away, of fishing, and he kind of invites this other man along one day, and they kind of become fishing buddies. So you do get some information about fishing in here. So it wasn't like overly boring or anything like that to me, but I'm not a big fisher person myself, but I get it. You know what I mean? And so this takes place in upstate New York. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there. This takes place in upstate New York, and they try to go into different parts of the rivers and trying to find new, secret, awesome fishing spots, that kind of thing. And then the younger man says, I heard about this. I heard about this spot called Dutchman's Creek. You should go check it out. And the dude's like, okay, yeah, sure, no problem. Sounds cool. Let's do it. And as they're on their way up there, they stop into a diner, and they get talking to, one of the cooks there, and they're like, are you going fishing? And they're like, Dutchman's Creek. And he's like, how did you hear about Dutchman's Creek, eh? So he goes into this whole story of the history of Dutchman's Creek. And I will say right here in this middle section of this book is like a totally different story. We got a story within a story. So if that's not your thing, maybe you won't like this. But we get this whole backstory of Dutchman's Creek and the strange happenings, and it goes to some places, and then that third part picks back up with the 2 men and then their experience out at Dutchman's Creek. And this went to some dark places for sure, and some strange, weird, unexpected places. And I ended up really enjoying this one. I love strange and weird, so this one was right up my alley, and it was just, it's kind of hard to talk about this book because it's really hard to describe without totally giving everything away. But the writing was really quiet, you start out really quiet, and then we get this other story, right, which is totally takes you out of the original story because it's his own story, right? And then we're dumped into this ending, which was phenomenal, but it was like violent and strange, and oh my gosh, very good. So I really liked it. Ended up with a 4 stars for me. I liked it a lot, and the narrator was very good. He has this sort of old-timer, gravelly voice, really fit the story very well. So that I liked that a lot. I then went into, well, basically another story about grief. That's fun. Crosstrades by Laurel Hightower. I finally read this. I'd been putting this one off for a bit because I knew it was sad, right? Like, I just knew. I know it's sad. But I had it on my TBR for the India Chords readathon that I'm doing this month. As it's time. It's time to dive in. And this was fantastic. We have a woman named Chris who has lost her son tragically in an accident, a car accident. And I mean, she's living her life. She's going to work and things, but I think she's really kind of struggling just to really move forward with life. Yeah, after him, she's divorced, and her son was her world. It was the love of her life, essentially, honestly, and she's just like lost. She's really lost, and it's very heartbreaking and sad. But she basically goes out daily to this little roadside memorial that's at the site of his crash. You've seen those on the side of the roads, I'm sure, and that's where she kind of talks to him and, visits with him and remembers him. And one day she has cut herself, I forget or what, and some blood drips on the ground. Does she start getting visits by her son? Has something awakened? I don't know, but basically we're asked the question here. If you were given the opportunity to bring someone back, would you? How far would you go? And would you do it? And Chris has that opportunity here, and it goes through some dark places. And man, this is good. It's so good. It's so wonderfully written. Though it's a short little thing, that character, that Chris, man, she's good. She's so good. And even her neighbor, her neighbor friend, I think his name's Dan. Oh my gosh. Anyway. Yeah, this was phenomenal. I'm so glad that I finally read this one. And I can't wait to read more by Laurel Hightower. My goodness. 5 stars. It was fantastic. Let's see it. Pull up the list here. Oh, I read The Patience of a Dead Man by Michael Clark. This was a group read for the Team Horror of the India Chords readathon, which again I'm doing for the month of July. And this was another one I did have kind of on my radar, wanted to check out. Hadn't yet. I mean, again, it's how you do. It's how you do. And so I was like, okay. It was on Kindle Unlimited. So I was like, okay, I can do it. And this is a ghost story. It's a haunted house ghost story. And I really liked it a lot. And essentially, we've got our main character. He is newly divorced. And this takes place in 1971. So there's also this nostalgia, which I really loved. I actually for this book as well. But he's kind of newly divorced and kind of like, oh man, trying to make a new start. So he purchases this property in New Hampshire. There's an old kind of farmhouse with lots of property and forest and a pond and all kinds of stuff. It's a big piece of land. And ultimately his goal is to kind of work on it because that's his job. He's in a contracting business, remodeling business. And maybe sell it because when you're divorced, you got child support and all this stuff, right? So because maybe I can make a profit. Might take me a while, a year or two, but I'll work on it and resell it, right? Well, also I think just again trying to make that new start. Try to get a goal in life here, right? That's until he starts hearing things and seeing things in this house. So, and things really escalate very quickly. There are ghosts. There are things seen in this story. And he discovers this journal that the previous occupant of the house started. So we learn about what she was experiencing in the house also. Ghost activity. And he's kind of working with his realtor, who he kind of forms a love interest with. They had a nice little romance budding here, which I liked. But they're like trying to figure out what's going on. Most people, when there's a ghost hanging around, they're like, we've got some unfinished business. Maybe we can find out what's unfinished here, and they will move on, right? Let's figure it out. Yeah. So that's their goal. But there's a certain ghost in here who. She's got some different things in mind. Yeah, this was very spooky. For me personally, horror stories that have ghosts and haunted house are like the absolutely scariest for me. They will freak me out. And this one, there were definitely some scenes where I'm like looking around, making sure there's nobody in the shadows, and it was definitely creepy and spooky. And I am like hooked for this series. Cannot wait to read books 2 and 3 because I gotta know. So this one was fantastic. I gave it 4.5 stars. I enjoyed it immensely. Very well written. And again, I love that nostalgia also of the 70s. I thought that was a nice touch. Fantastic. Loved it. All right, last one that I just finished today on audiobook is When These Mountains Burn by David Joy. David Joy's another author that I've, this long list of authors that he's like, I need to read the book by this person. Yeah, he's been on my list for a while. And so this audiobook came off of hold. This narrator was McLeod Andrews. And he did a phenomenal job. I'll talk about that in a minute. But this is essentially a story about drugs and how it really can just the effects on an area. This is set in western North Carolina, the Appalachian area, around like Cherokee. Names like Silva and Cullowhee are mentioned. And I'm from North Carolina. I know these areas. When you mention Cherokee, I visualize it in my mind. I know what you're talking about. And there's another reason why I want to read David Joy. And but anyway, but this book we get like perspectives of everything, concerning. We get a couple guys that use the drugs. We have a parent who has lost a son to drug use. We get a little bit of the drug dealers themselves, and there's law enforcement, there's a DEA, there's an undercover guy. We get kind of all this perspective of how a community, how it affects the community, and who is all part of this, right? It's heartbreaking. It's bleak. I mean, it doesn't hold back on the reality of drugs. Particularly what this is crystal meth and heroin. And it doesn't hold back on that. It's very sad in a lot of ways. But it's very good. I thought it was wonderfully written. Fantastic. Joy can write a character. I mean, all of these characters came to life on the page. You could really see them in your mind. And even the settings, you could just really visualize everything, which I love, right? And there's even, what I really appreciated though was there was even a little bit of commentary. One of the characters, Denny, is a Cherokee man. And he's reminiscing about his uncle who used to play to the tourists in Cherokee. You could get your picture taken with an Indian, right? That kind of thing. And he talks about this almost embarrassment of his uncle back then, and then he remarks on how Cherokee has changed today, though. A lot of the youth are relearning the language, taking pride in their heritage, and you notice that in Cherokee. Having visited when I was a kid, when I saw that awful touristy stuff that really made me uncomfortable to having visited like last year or 2 years ago. You can see that change, and I actually thought that was just, it's a very small part of the book, but for me I was like, oh yeah, I see that. And anyway, that's a side note on the story, but it's something that kind of resonated with me that I noticed. But this is fantastic. The narrator, I don't know if he's a Southerner, but he nailed the Southern accent. I'm telling you, I thought I was listening to like uncles tell stories. Like I said, there are a few different characters in here, and he had a different type of dialect, different little play on the voice for every one of them, and they were all just like spot on. As a Southerner, as a North Carolinian, I was like, man, this is good. So anyway, I thought it was fantastic. I gave it 5 stars because it's wonderful, and I recommend it. And that's going to do it for what I'm finishing. And this is already still 20-minute long video. But anyway, I'm in the process still of reading Wool by Hugh Howey, doing the read along over with Book Invasion, enjoying that. And I started the audiobook for Colson Whitehead's The Underground Railroad. Lord have mercy. Words, speak them. Enjoying that so far. So I'm going to continue on with those. And that's going to do it for me today. This is still a long video. Sorry. Thanks as always for watching. And, spending your time here. I make these long ass videos. I'm sorry. And I'll check you in the next one. Bye.